I sat in the lawyer's office in Bend, Oregon, the faint light of the February afternoon streaming through the large window, highlighting the divorce papers on the polished ebony desk. As Laura, 48 years old, co-founder of Novatech, a technology company specializing in business management software, I had spent 20 years building this dream with my husband Mark. I sacrificed evenings with friends, vacations. I never had to work by his side, writing the first lines of code, convincing investors, and turning Novatech into a company worth $50 million. That day, I signed the divorce papers, ending 22 years of marriage, thinking that at least we were parting in respect. Mark said he needed space to find himself, and I, though heartbroken, still wanted him to be happy. I had just put pen to paper, feeling as though a part of my soul was being torn apart, when the phone buzzed a message from Emily, a young engineer at Novatech. Laura, I'm sorry, but I have to tell you, Mark and Jessica just announced their engagement at the Sun River Hotel. They're having a party right now with champagne white roses everywhere in the lobby and even a live band. Jessica, 30 years old, was the new stepmother of our daughter Sophie, whom Mark had introduced as his best friend a few months ago, claiming she was just helping him plan events for the company. I sat frozen, my breath heavy, rereading the message, each word like a sharp knife. They're laughing and talking as if you don't exist, Laura. Mark is bragging to everyone that Jessica is the breath of fresh air he needed, and they've been planning this since last month, when you were still his wife. I looked at the wet signature on the divorce papers, feeling as though the entire world was collapsing beneath my feet. Mark hadn't just betrayed me, but had conspired with Jessica, while I was still his wife, while I still believed we could save our marriage. They were throwing an engagement party, drinking champagne, and laughing while I was signing paperwork, thinking I was doing the right thing to maintain peace for Sophie. But I thought of my mother, who had raised me alone after my father left, who always said, Laura, your silence is your strength, but when needed, let it explode like a fire no one can put out. I whispered, my voice trembling but firm. Mark, Jessica, you are wrong, completely wrong, and I will make you see. Not with tears, not with shouting, but by taking back everything that belongs to me, by making you regret ever underestimating me. I didn't drive to the Sun River Hotel to confront them, nor did I call Mark to argue. Instead, I opened my laptop, checked the company emails, and searched for clues about what they had been doing behind my back. I called Sarah, my best friend and lawyer, who had been by my side since college. Sarah, I need to see you now. Mark and Jessica just stabbed me in the back, and I won't let them win so easily. Sarah replied, her voice warm, Laura. Come to my house, bring all the evidence you have. We'll figure this out, and I promise they will pay. I stood up, took a deep breath, and looked at the photo of my mother on the wall, her silver hair reminding me of the resilience she had taught me. I thought about Sophie, about how I wanted her to see her mother as strong, not defeated by betrayal. Have you ever thought you knew the person next to you, only to find out they were plotting betrayal right in front of you while you still trusted them? I've been there, and I was shattered. But what I did next would leave all of Bend, Oregon, stunned. The cracks in my marriage with Mark didn't appear overnight. They had been creeping in for a long time, like cold winds blowing through the cracks in the door of our wooden house in Bend, which I tried to ignore, hoping everything would go back to how it was. When I met Mark at the University of Oregon, he was an ambitious software engineer with bright eyes and a smile that made me believe we could conquer the world. I was a programmer dreaming of changing the way small businesses manage their work, and we founded Novatech together. In the early days, we worked in a small apartment writing code until late at night, eating instant noodles to save money and joking about the day Novatech would become a tech giant. I gave up the opportunity to work in Silicon Valley to stay in Bend, supporting Mark from convincing investors to managing the engineering team as the company grew. When Sophie was born, I balanced raising her and working, staying up all night to perfect the software while Mark met with clients building his reputation. I thought we were a team, that our love and work were one, that my sacrifices were for both of us to shine. But about 5 years ago, Mark changed. He became distant, frequently going on long business trips, and began mocking my ideas about expanding Novatech into nonprofit solutions to help small businesses that couldn't afford expensive software. "Laura, you're too idealistic," he said, his gaze contemptuous, as if I were a dreaming child. "We're here to make money, not to do charity." I brushed it off, thinking he was just under pressure from a large investment the company had recently received. Then Jessica showed up, a 30-year-old graphic designer Mark hired as a consultant for Novatech's image. I welcomed her, even invited her to our home for dinner, thinking she was just an enthusiastic young colleague. But I started to notice the signs. The way Mark smiled at Jessica in meetings. The way she called him Marky when she thought I couldn't hear how they stayed late at the office, claiming to be working on a new campaign. One time, I accidentally saw a text message on Mark's phone sent to Jessica. "Meet you at Sun River this weekend. Laura won't suspect she's busy with Sophie." I confronted him, my voice shaking. "Mark, is there something going on with you and Jessica behind my back?" He laughed, his eyes cold. "Laura, you're being paranoid. Jessica is just a friend, and I'm working to save this company, which you no longer have the energy to manage." I wanted to believe him, but my mother's words echoed in my mind. "Laura, your heart is big, but don't let it blind you to the truth." That advice made me wake up. I began to act quietly but decisively. I saved company emails, took notes on the meetings Mark and Jessica attended, and checked my shares in Novatech, 40%, that I had never thought I would need to use as a weapon. I also opened a separate account, moved my personal savings to protect myself, and contacted Sarah to prepare for the worst. I told myself, Mark and Jessica think I'm weak, think I'll stay silent for Sophie for the company's reputation. But they don't know. I wrote the first lines of code for Novatech. They don't know I'm the one who convinced the investors when the company almost went bankrupt. They don't know I'm ready. I sat in the living room looking at the picture of Sophie on the shelf, her bright smile in her graduation dress. I wanted Sophie to see her mother, not just as someone who sacrifices, but as someone who fights. Have you ever felt the closest person betray you, but still hoped you were wrong, only to discover the truth was more painful than you imagined? I've been there, and I was broken. But the secret I found was even more horrifying than I ever thought. The message from Emily about Mark and Jessica's engagement party was like a storm, but I didn't let it sweep me away. I drove through the pine tree-lined roads to Sarah's house, my best friend and lawyer who lived in a small house by the Deschutes River, where I always felt peace amidst the chaos. Sarah's living room was filled with legal books, Oregon landscape paintings, and the faint smell of coffee, like a refuge. I sat in the armchair telling her about the engagement party, about how Mark and Jessica mocked me the moment I signed the divorce papers, about the betrayal, not just from my husband, but from the woman I once invited into my home. "Sarah, I need your help," I said, my voice shaking, but filled with determination. "Mark betrayed me, and Jessica is his accomplice. I have 40% of the shares in Novatech, and I want to use it to take back what's mine. Not just the company, but my dignity in front of Sophie and myself. I don't just want to kick them out. I want to turn my efforts into something bigger, something they will never have." Sarah listened quickly, jotting notes in a leather-bound notebook, and replied, "Laura, your shares are a powerful weapon. Mark holds 45%, but with your 40% and the support of the small shareholders, we can turn this around. Send me all the evidence from emails to messages, and I'll review the company's contracts. But what do you plan to do with Novatech? Just kick Mark out? Or do you have a bigger plan?" I smiled, though my heart was still heavy. "Sarah, I want to turn Novatech into a nonprofit, offering free software and financial support for women entrepreneurs. I want Mark and Jessica to see that my 20 years of work are bigger than their betrayal, bigger than the champagne glasses they raised at their engagement party. But the crisis didn't stop there. A week later, I found out that Mark and Jessica were spreading rumors in the company that I was unstable after the divorce, trying to convince shareholders that I was no longer fit to serve as co-founder. A young engineer, Emily, who had always admired me, pulled me aside in a corner of the office. Her voice worried Laura. "Mark said you want to sell Novatech to get back at him, that you're no longer clear-headed enough to lead. Is that true? I trust you. But people are wavering." I smiled, though my heart ached. "Emily, thank you for telling me Mark is lying to cover up his actions. But I will prove the truth, not with words, but with actions. Just wait for the shareholders' meeting." I called Sarah right after Sarah. Mark and Jessica are smearing me, trying to discredit me in front of the shareholders. I need the meeting to happen soon, and I want it to be fair so I can present the truth. Sarah responded over the phone, her voice calm but firm. "Laura, I've contacted the major shareholders, and the meeting will take place next week. I'm reviewing the meeting minutes and company emails, and you have a legal advantage with your shares. Prepare a presentation short but sharp, and I'll be there to support you. Mark and Jessica don't know who they've provoked." Inside, I was still struggling. I thought about the years I had sacrificed for Mark, giving up personal dreams to build Novatech, wondering if I had been wrong to trust him so much. But then I remembered a time. "Sophie, 16, said, 'Mom, I'm proud that you work so hard, but I want you to be happy.'" Those words felt like an anchor. I went home, opened my laptop, and checked Emily's email again. She had sent an additional internal document that Mark had tried to hide. I wrote a note in my notebook. "The day I found an ally, I knew I wasn't alone. Do you think someone who once loved you could hurt you more deeply than an enemy, just because they know where your weaknesses lie? I used to think so, but what I found in Mark's email stunned me even more." I came home the next morning, sat in the living room, opened my laptop, and reviewed old emails and documents between me and Mark, hoping to find more clues about his and Jessica's plan. In a misdirected email from 3 months ago, Mark wrote to Jessica instead of me. "Laura doesn't know anything about our plan. I'll convince the shareholders to remove her from the board, and you'll take her place. Novatech will be ours, Jess, and we'll sell 20% of the shares to a Chinese investor pocketing $10 million. I was stunned rereading every word, feeling like the blood in my body had frozen. But that wasn't all. I found a record of an internal meeting that Mark and Jessica had deliberately hidden, where they proposed selling 20% of the company's shares to a foreign investor, pocketing millions without informing me, even though I was a co-founder and held 40% of the shares. My internal monologue erupted. Mark and Jessica think I'm naive, think I'll let them steal 20 years of my work, think I'll stay silent for Sophie, or for the company's reputation. But they don't know I wrote the first lines of code for Novatech. Don't know I was the one who convinced investors when the company was on the brink of collapse in 2010. Johnson, 2010. Don't know I spent my life building this dream. They want to remove me. I'll turn Novatech into something they'll never own, a nonprofit that helps women launch startups so my effort reaches millions. Not just profits for them. I sent Sarah the documents, the misdirected email, the meeting minutes, and the internal transaction history, with a note. "Sarah, this is the truth about Mark and Jessica. I want to speak at the shareholders' meeting not only to expose them, but to propose transforming Novatech into a nonprofit offering free software and financial support for women entrepreneurs. I want my effort to become light, not the shadow of betrayal." Sarah called back immediately, her voice excited Laura. "This email is undeniable evidence, and the nonprofit idea is a knockout punch, with your 40% stake and the support of the minor shareholders. We can gain control. I'm preparing legal paperwork to block Mark from selling shares, and you get your presentation ready because Olive Bend will be talking about it." I nodded, feeling like a warrior heading to battle, even though fear still lingered inside. I thought of my mother, of how she overcame hardship to raise me, and told myself I will do this for Mom, for Sophie, for the women I want to help, and for myself because I know my worth. I began preparing the presentation not just to expose Mark and Jessica, but to inspire the shareholders with a new future where Novatech is not just a money-making company, but a force that changes lives. I imagined my nonprofit organization supporting people like Anna, a single mother I once met who dreamed of opening an online shop but lacked the capital. That idea felt like a ray of light cutting through the fog of pain. But I was still worried. I wondered if the shareholders would believe me or if they'd think I was just a betrayed wife out for revenge. I remembered one evening when my mother sat with me and said, "Laura, your truth will speak louder than any lie, but you have to let it erupt at the right moment." Those words felt like a foundation. I opened my laptop, reviewed Mark's misdirected email again, and wrote a note. The day I discovered the truth, I decided not just to win, but to create a lasting legacy. Have you ever discovered a secret that made you want to change the whole world, not for revenge, but for justice and your own dream? I stood at that threshold, and the Novatech shareholders meeting was approaching faster than I thought. The shareholders meeting took place at Novatech headquarters in downtown Bend, in a modern glass conference room overlooking the Deschutes River with natural light flooding through large windows. I had spent 3 nights preparing the presentation, not only to expose Mark and Jessica, but to propose a new vision, transforming Novatech into a nonprofit that offers free management software and financial support for women entrepreneurs, from single mothers to young people wanting to start tech companies. On the day of the meeting, I wore an elegant gray suit, stood before the mirror in my bedroom, and whispered, "Laura, this is your stage, and you're going to make it impossible for them to look away." I brought a USB with the evidence and presentation and walked into the room with pride in my eyes, even though my heart pounded as if it would leap out of my chest. Mark presented first, standing at the podium, his voice confident, his navy blue suit accentuating his still handsome look at 50 ladies and gentlemen. Novatech needs a fresh breeze. Laura has been unstable after the divorce, and I proposed Jessica, a talented designer. Join the board to bring innovation. We should also consider selling 20% of the shares to raise capital and take Novatech to the next level. I sat in a corner of the room, hand gripping my laptop, eyes calm but sharp. Sarah, sitting next to me, looked at me and nodded gently like a signal. When it was my turn, I stood up, plugged the USB into the projector, and began my voice low but firm. Dear shareholders, I am Laura, co-founder of Novatech, the one who wrote the first lines of code and convinced the investor when the company was on the verge of bankruptcy. Mark and Jessica plotted to remove me from this company, the one I sacrificed 20 years to build. They threw their engagement party right after I signed the divorce papers, mocking me as if I didn't exist. And this is their plan. I projected Mark's mistakenly sent email onto the large screen with the line, "Laura knows nothing. I'll remove her and you'll take her place. We'll sell shares and pocket $10 million, I continued. They also concealed meeting minutes proposing to sell 20% of the shares without informing me, even though I own 40%. Mark called me unstable to cover up his actions, but I'm not here to argue. The room fell silent. Shareholders murmured some, covered their mouths in shock. Mark shot up his voice, shaking Laura. "You're twisting the truth. That was just an idea. Nothing has been done yet." Jessica, sitting next to him, turned pale, trying to jump in. "We didn't mean any harm." I cut her off, my voice sharp like a declaration. "No harm. You wanted to steal the company I built, and you, Jessica, helped him. But I'm not here for revenge. I propose to turn Novatech into a nonprofit organization, providing free software and financial support for women entrepreneurs. I want my efforts to reach millions, not just profits for you and Jessica." Sarah stood up and clapped, and the whole room followed applause, roaring like waves. A major shareholder, Mr. Thompson, nodded. "Laura, I support you. Novatech needs this vision. It's this. Mark and Jessica left the meeting room, eyes panicked, not daring to look at anyone. After the meeting, Sarah hugged me. Laura, you did it. They have no more chances. I walked out of the room, eyes proud, knowing I not only took back the company but laid the foundation for something greater. I thought of Sophie, of how I wanted her to be proud, that her mother didn't give in. Do you think truth can be stronger than betrayal, even when it's hidden behind smiles and lies? I did it, and I know I was right. But what I did after the meeting is what truly made Mark and Jessica regret. Leaving the meeting room, I drove to the Deschutes River where small waves sparkled under the sunset. I sat on a large rock, letting the tears fall, not out of anger or resentment, but out of the sadness from realizing Mark wasn't the man I once loved, the man who once held my hand when Sophie was born, and Jessica was never the friend I once trusted. I thought of my mother, of her words, Laura. Your silence is strength, but when needed, let it erupt. Her words felt like a breeze blowing away the pain in me. I thought about the years I sacrificed for Mark, giving up personal dreams to build Novatech, only to receive betrayal in return. But I didn't want to hold on to the pain forever. That night I went home, sat in the living room, opened my notebook, and wrote a letter to myself. Laura, you don't need Mark or Jessica to shine. You don't need their recognition to know your worth. You fought, you won, and now you'll turn Novatech into a legacy, not just to take the company back, but to continue your mother's spirit, helping other women find their light in the dark. That act, simple yet powerful, felt like a turning point, helping me heal. The next day, I met Sarah at her small office, where family photos and her law degree hung on the walls. Sarah, I want nonprofit Novatech to start now, I said, voice full of determination. I want to provide free software to women entrepreneurs, from single mothers to young people wanting to start tech companies. I want my efforts to reach millions. So Mark and Jessica will see how small their betrayal really was. Sarah hugged me, smiling brightly. Laura, that's the most beautiful revenge I've ever heard, turning their selfishness into a gift for the community. I'll help you form the organization, reach out to sponsors, and make sure Mark's shares are revoked. Are you ready to change the world? I nodded, feeling a new strength like I had just found myself again. After the storm, I thought about the times I doubted myself, the nights I wondered if I was wrong to spend my life supporting Mark. But now, looking at the plan for nonprofit Novatech with the goal of supporting 100 women in the first year, I knew I had chosen the right path. I stood in front of the mirror, looked into my eyes, and whispered, Mom, I'm doing this for you, for Sophie, for women like you, and for myself. I opened my notebook and wrote a note. The day I healed, I found purpose, not just for me, but for the whole world. Have you ever turned pain into a gift for others? Not to prove anything, but because you know. It's right, I did, and it led me to a place I never expected. Shareholders approved the plan to turn Novatech into a nonprofit within a month, and Mark was removed from the board, losing 45% of his shares due to ethical violations and hiding information from shareholders. Jessica, no longer trusted by anyone in the company, left Bend, her reputation gone. As the local press reported the incident, I led nonprofit Novatech, launching at a community center in Bend, with 100 women joining the first startup support program. I stood on stage wearing a blue coat and said, Nonprofit Novatech, named after my dream, is the gift I give to women who want independence, who want to build a future without being held back by lack of capital or opportunity. My ex-husband Mark and his new stepmother Jessica plotted to steal this company, thinking I would stay silent. But today, this organization is proof that their betrayal cannot win. We, the women here, will shine together. The audience applauded, and I saw Sarah in the front row smiling proudly. Mark came to the launch event, standing in a corner of the room, his eyes full of regret, no longer a trace of arrogance. After the ceremony, he approached, voice low. "Laura, I was wrong. I didn't expect you to do this. Didn't expect you to be this strong. I'm sorry for betraying you, for letting Jessica convince me." I looked at him, voice calm but firm. "Mark, you thought you stole my dream, but you gave me the chance to build something bigger. Novatech nonprofit is proof that I don't need your apology to move on, but I hope you learn that betrayal only leads to loneliness." Mark lowered his head, tears rolling down, and walked away. I didn't feel triumphant, only relieved, as if I had let go of a burden. Novatech nonprofit was praised by the press, from the Bend Bulletin to national tech magazines, calling it a flame of justice and innovation. I received dozens of thank you letters from women, saying the free software helped them start businesses, to a young girl, Anna, saying she wanted to become a software engineer because of me. I thought of my mother, how proud she always was when I helped others, and imagined her smiling somewhere. Novatech nonprofit kept growing, with plans to expand into 5 new states in the next 3 years. I opened my notebook and wrote a line. "The day I built a legacy." I saw my mother smile, and I knew I had won. Do you believe a single act of kindness can change an entire community, even when it starts from betrayal? I've seen it, and it changed me forever. Novatech nonprofit expanded rapidly, supporting 1,000 women in starting businesses over 3 years, from Bend to cities like Portland, Seattle, and Denver. I began organizing free workshops, teaching business management skills, from financial planning to using our software. One participant, Anna, came to me after a session, her voice trembling. "Laura, because of you, I opened an online store, and now my son can go to college without debt. You're my inspiration." Her words were like a breeze, sweeping away any lingering doubts inside me. I organized a large charity event at Drake Park in Bend, raising $500,000 to build women's startup support centers, with thousands attending, from children painting their dreams to volunteers teaching women how to write business plans. Bend was filled with stories about me, from local newspapers to online articles calling me the woman who turned betrayal into hope. But it wasn't always smooth. One time, a major donor criticized me for being too idealistic, saying I should focus on Bend instead of expanding nationwide. I listened, invited a nonprofit management expert to join, and Novatech nonprofit became stronger, with clearer processes and a bigger team. I thought of my mother, how she always helped others, even when facing hardship. I started spending weekends teaching kids about financial planning, and a little girl, Lily, said, "Missy, Laura, I want to do what you do, help people achieve their dreams." Her words were like a star lighting my path. I called Sarah. "Sarah, I want Novatech nonprofit to become a global symbol. Do you think we can do it?" Sarah laughed. "Laura, with your heart and talent, nothing is impossible." I opened my notebook and wrote a line. "The day I spread the light, I saw the world shine brighter, and I knew I was living my mother's dream." Do you believe a community can heal the deepest wounds, even when they come from family? I've seen it, and it led me to a radiant future. 5 years after the shareholder meeting, I stood on stage at a tech conference in Portland, in front of thousands of people, from young engineers to women hoping to start businesses. I wore a red dress, the color of the flame my mother once said I carried inside me, and told them my ex-husband Mark and his new stepmother Jessica plotted to steal Novatech, the company I co-founded, thinking I'd stay silent out of shame. But I turned it into Novatech nonprofit, helping thousands of women from Bend to Denver start businesses, overcome hardship, and build their futures. I didn't do it for Mark or Jessica. I did it because I knew my worth, because I wanted to live my mother's dream. the woman who believed technology was a tool to help others. The crowd applauded, and I saw tears shimmering in many eyes. In the Q&A session, a young audience member, voice trembling, asked, "How do I fight back when I'm betrayed by family when the whole world turns away?" I looked at her, smiled, and answered, "Let your actions speak. Start with one small step, one good thing you believe in, one dream you won't give up on. Your worth doesn't need approval, just your belief." Every program I launched was a small step, and now they've become a legacy. You can do it too. The conference ended with a round of applause. But the moment I'll never forget was when Anna from the online store ran to hug me, saying, "Laura, because of you, I just opened a second branch, and I'm helping other women start their own businesses. You changed our lives." I hugged her, and it felt like hugging the whole world. Novatech nonprofit is now a national symbol supporting 200 startup programs, with a team of 100 volunteers, from engineers to financial experts, and internationally recognized with an Innovation Award. Mark lives quietly in San Francisco, occasionally sending apology emails, but I don't reply. Not out of resentment, but because I've found peace. Jessica disappeared from the tech industry. No one mentions her anymore. I keep one mistaken email from Mark in a small frame under the words, "Your truth is a flame no one can extinguish." At the 5-year anniversary of Novatech nonprofit, I stood before the community and said, "I used to think Mark and Jessica defined my worth, but I define myself, and each of us has the right to paint our own life's portrait." I thought of my mother, how she always believed in me, and imagined her smiling through every program I ran. Life, like a tech project, requires persistence, strategy, and faith. Some days you feel invisible, but remember, you are the flame. What will you do to make sure no one underestimates your silence, and that your truth shines even when the world turns away? I did it, and I know you can too.